as I wait for my Clash of Clans army to train, I figured I could use this time to talk about a recent game I had that ended up being pretty good. I played pretty well, and it was for a tournament my friend is running. So I figured, this would be pretty good. Just talk about some of the decisions I made in this game, and kind of the thought process there. This was a couple days ago at this point, so I don't remember everything super well, but I remember generally how it went, and the main ideas of what I was thinking. So I'm going against Maverick shooters who was seeded to win the whole tournament, and he's a great player. He's played in SPL. He's made quite a name for himself. So I definitely had my work cut out for me here. The team I'm using here is a nice balanced team, which people who know me will understand that I kind of that I like those kinds of teams. Maybe not balanced. It's more like bulky offense. Like I do like these kinds of teams that operate at this sort of pace. That nice in between, between hyper offense and stall. And this team made my good friend Keith. It's done notoriously well. Let me zoom in here. Yeah, it's better. It's done notoriously well in tournaments. It has before I played this match, it had a 5-0 record in tournaments. It was used in like OST and some other tournaments. I don't remember. We'd pass it around, and it's quite the good team. Yeah, I don't know the OU meta super well, but from what I understand, this team just picks off like Kyurem's checks with Miaskarada and Primarina, right, and then it cleans up with either Raging Bolt or Kyurem. Pretty sure that's the idea. It's a neat team, and I hardly know how to play OU. Never mind building for the tier. So I figured, hey, why not take the team that's done so well before? But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm using here. I'll probably leave that team in the description of the video with original nicknames and all. Not mine, but Keith's nicknames. Hence why you will see Mahmoud Thickbooty in there. But yeah, so this team I'm facing down is, from what I understand, pretty hyper offensive. Right, a lot of booster energy ideas. With Roaring Moon, Iron Valiant, Raging Bolt. I kind of assumed this was a lead Iron Treads, because I heard about them running like Steel Beam with Stealth Rock in the lead slot, which makes sense for hyper offense like this. You don't really need removal when you're just hammering away at the opponent, right? So you can reasonably deduce on preview that this is a Calm Mind Primarina. Interesting choice on this team. I mean, again, I don't know too much about Gen 9 OU, but I didn't expect to see Primarina on hyper offense. I'm assuming that's what this team structure would be called. But hey, I mean, I've never really cared a ton for like trying to figure out what team archetype something is, because like it's a fruitless endeavor in my opinion, because just trying to tack a name onto something doesn't really matter. I mean, I guess it's good for the sake of communication between players, right? Like, hey, this is a hyper offense team. Well, you have to know what that means, right? But yeah, I mean, this seems hyper offensive, so Primarina here is an interesting choice, but I've seen what this thing can do with a few Calm Minds up. So the idea that I'm trying to play for is I kind of want to... I want to break through with Meowscarada and Kyurem, and then have Raging Bolt clean up in the end game. My matchup looks pretty good, especially if I save my Terra for the end with that Raging Bolt. It's Terra Fairy, so it can eat stuff like Roaring Moon and Zamazenta's attacks, um, and just be able to clean up really nicely. Especially if he gives me the Raging Bolts early enough, but I won't spoil that aspect of the match. So yeah, that's kind of my game plan. Just poke holes with Meowscarada and maybe Kyurem, and then clean up with Raging Bolt. That was kind of the game plan I had going into this. This is AV Primarina, so I was also pretty confident in being able to beat Iron Valiant between Primarina and Galarian Slowking. If anything, Roaring Moon could have been a threat with Dragon Dance. I think they run like Dragon Dance 3 attacks. It's like Crunch, Acrobatics, EQ, I think. I'm probably wrong on that, but I know Acrobatics and Earthquake are quite common. And then they'll run like Booster Attack. I think they only run Booster Speed if it's on Sun, and they're running Choice Band, Roaring Moon, and then you get the speed boost with that. I'm pretty sure that's the only time people run Booster Speed. Because if you go max Jolly on Roaring Moon, you still have a higher attack stat just because its attack stat is so high. I don't know it off the top of my head for obvious reasons, but yeah, I do know that it defaults to getting booster attack, even with a speed boosting nature. That's before like lowering attack EVs or whatever. But yeah, so this lead was actually kind of tricky for me. I was a little torn on what to do because I want to say I'm not proud of how I played this early game. I'm like, this is definitely the worst part of how I played, and it got me off to a pretty bad start. So I'm thinking like, if I see Lead Iron Treads, which I probably will, it's likely to have Steel Beam, and I didn't know. I don't know if Iron Treads will run like mixed with Steel Beam and Earthquake. I didn't know if that was a possibility. I just wasn't aware of whether Iron Treads ran those two moves together. So for the first few turns, I found myself scrambling to pull out ahead in the lead. So I just figured Great Tusk would be good enough here. I think I do lead Great Tusk into Iron Treads. I do think it's funny that Maverick Shooters hid the replay as soon as it started. I'm not sure why he did that. I don't know. Maybe there's something super obvious that I'm not thinking of, but whatever. That doesn't matter. So yeah, I lead Tusk into Treads, and he goes for the Earth Power. Now, here you would think like, okay, I'm gonna go Slowking because I might value health on Great Tusk for the Roaring Bolt, not the Raging Bolt, for example, right? But no, I was like, oh, maybe he has Earth Power and Earthquake, and I just was not thinking about that. This isn't an excuse, but I was battling at a pretty inconvenient time, because I had work that day and stuff, and so it was. I kind of had to schedule around him, if you know what I mean. Not that he was bad with scheduling, but whatever. Yeah, so I wasn't fully thinking about this as well as I could have. So I take the Earth Power, I Earthquake, doesn't kill, I get the leftovers. Yeah, I was hesitant about going to Slowking because I you know, I I was thinking too much about what it could have that would be really bad for me, as opposed to what it's likely to have, like what a lead treads should have, right? Some kind of ground move, in this case earth power, right? Stealth rock, rapid spin, was very realistic here, and then steel beam, which I did know about. I did know about the steel beam that gets run. So I guess rather than getting in my own head about, oh, Iron Treads could have Earthquake, it could have 2 ground moves, I should have just been thinking about, you know, what it was most likely to have, because that's what I can bank on the most, the most consistently used sets, or, combinations of moves or whatever. And you can kind of see how that affected my play. So I think, yeah, I go into Slow King. He Earth Powers. I Chilly Reception here. I don't remember if I had Ice Beam. Let me check real quick if I can find the team. Oh, that's the wrong one. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, it does have Ice Beam. I think it's so you don't. Why does Slow King run Ice Beam? I'm trying to remember, but I honestly don't. But I did have Ice Beam, and I didn't click it. I don't know if it would have killed there, but my guess is that the calc said Ice Beam wouldn't kill, and I panicked, thinking like, oh, what if he has Earthquake and Ice Beam doesn't kill, and then he kills my Slow King, and then I don't have anything for Valiant or Primarina or whatever. I did just panic against this Treads, and I really just should have thought it through more, based on the fact that it led, and, what kind of moves that would be obligatory for this kind of Pokemon, especially on a hyper-offensive team. Because typically with these hyper-offensive teams, you can fill in the blanks a lot of the time. I mean, really, if you know a meta well enough, and, it's a team preview generation, you can kind of feel out what a lot of their sets are on preview. Like, this Zamazenta is going to be some sort of Iron Press set. Raging Bolt's going to be probably Booster Calm Mind. Roaring Moon's going to be Dragon Dance. I guess Iron Valiant could be 1,200 different things, but that's Iron Valiant for you. I don't have any water. Let me go grab it. It's all the way across my room. Okay. Okay. So, where was I? Yeah, so, I mean, you can typically feel out what these sets are in team preview, and I should have been thinking more thoroughly about what this could be, or what this Treads should be, instead of what it could be, right? That's kind of what you have. That's kind of what you have to think about when playing Mons, like, like what should this set be based on what information I have, right? So I Chilly Reception, go into Meowscarada. He Steel Beams me. Yeah, no. Bad play by me. Staying in. Yeah, I let the Meowscarada get chipped, because Meowscarada is really good here, because it can take from full health a Raging Bolt Thunderclap. I can I can potentially come in on a Roaring Moon, Earthquake, or Crunch. And then, if it hasn't clicked Dragon Dance yet. And this is Boots Meowscarada, so I'm not Scarf, so I don't outrun +1 Moon. But still keeping it healthy would have been really nice. And yeah, I just played this lead horribly. But the Treads is down, and I kind of just had to collect myself and be like, okay, I played that lead poorly, but the Treads is down. I have a pretty solid matchup here. I just need to convert it and start bringing this back. Had to start looking for those win paths, which did involve having Meowscarada in. So I was already halfway there. So Iron Valiant comes in, and it's typically handled by stuff like Slowking and Primarina. So I go to Slowking first, just because I felt like keeping Primarina healthy for Roaring Moon and Zamazenta. And yeah, so I go into Slowking. He Moonblasts. I know Iron Valiant carries knockoff, but I believe I just looked at the calc and saw that knockoff didn't kill. So yeah, I just thought like, hey, Slowking's fine here. I guess I didn't consider that. Well, I'll let you see. Yeah, he clicks Terra Dark knockoff here. I guess I didn't consider that. Again, this is more of just a metagame knowledge thing. Yeah, I mean, at the very least, he burns his Terra, right? Getting that resource out of him is huge, and you'll see how that comes into play later in the game. So, I mean, losing Slowking is unfortunate, right? But it is what it is. Yeah, so I bring in Primarina because now Moonblast looks really good. Now he's giving up his Terra. I believe I have Flip Turn on this. I do. So if... Is it raining? No, okay. Yeah, so, Primarina comes out. I have ideas with Flip Turn and stuff. I can bring Kyurem in, because Kyurem Freeze Dried just looks really good into the team in general, right? If I bring it out on Primarina, even if it's Assault Vest Primarina and Freeze Dry doesn't KO, even though this is specs, I don't know the calc on that offhand, right? Is my Clash of Clans army done? Almost. Not that I'm just going to stop the video when my Clash of Clans army is done. I just want to check on that. But yeah, so I felt comfortable going Primarina here because it gave me the most flexibility in the battle. Yeah, Destiny Bond Iron Valiant, so he trades 1 for 2 plus Terra, which I guess is fine. Because against offensive teams, having them burn their Terra that early is great because it eases prediction and it lets you form a more consistent game plan, especially now that the Iron Valiant is gone, which could have given me a lot of trouble. Having that Terra was really nice for my offensive core in the back. So Moonblast takes both of us down. Yeah, and then I was like, yeah, I didn't know they ran that. Apparently it's not common, but I don't know. So I go to Meowscarada. I believe this was because look at the set here. It's Flower, Trick, Knockoff, Triple Axle, Low Kick. That covers pretty much his whole team. And yeah, so Roaring Moon gets the booster attack as expected, and I just take the opportunity to low kick. If he had gone anything else, I guess Primarina would have been annoying. Honestly, in hindsight, I'm not sure why he didn't. Maybe Flower Trick still KO'd, even though it wouldn't be stab with how Gen 9 Protean works. I guess low kick into Flower Trick would have killed. Maybe. If not, I don't know why he stayed in here, but yeah, he stays in, and I low kick and take that Roaring Moon. Really valuable. Now Zamazenta comes in, right, on the physical attacker. What a surprise. even though he knows I'm boots, so I'm not locked in. Although I guess, if anything, Zamazenta was his best play here anyway. Although, maybe he could have gone, after he'd gone Roaring Moon, maybe he could have gone Zamazenta, but hyper-offensive teams like this don't typically like switching, and I guess he wanted to get the most mileage out of Roaring Moon. I could have triple axled there, but I believe low kick was also 120, and triple axle, after all three hits are considered, is 120 base power, I believe. But also hitting all three of those triple axles is a 72% chance, and I didn't want to take that. Right, so I think that's fair. Right, he goes Zamazenta, and I don't... Right, Zamazenta is very threatening. It's, fast, strong, all that stuff. So I didn't want to let it set up for free. So as he sets up an Iron Defense, I go for Flower Trick, get 24%. That doesn't seem like a bunch of damage, but it is pretty meaningful, and that comes into play later. He does get greedy and goes for a second Iron Defense, which honestly I don't agree with at all. You only really needed +3 to sweep through the rest of my team with Body Press. Like, maybe you needed +5 to kill Raging Bolt, but, even if I Terra Fairy, then you're still not going to be breaking through either way. So, I mean, at that point, you could have definitely just cut your losses, in my opinion, right? Again, a lot of the stuff I'm saying is subject to scrutiny and nuance, because, again, I know this tier on a very surface level. But just based on the fundamentals I have and what I've learned playing this game, I think he definitely should have started attacking me sooner rather than later. I agree with the first Iron Defense, but not the second one. Not quite the second one. So, yeah, I keep going for Flower Trick just to deny it free setup. I didn't want to go into Raging Bolt immediately because I knew one that, if he body pressed on the Raging Bolt, I probably lost. And I had learned like the day before this match, that Zamazenta runs Resto Chesto sometimes. So I formed the game plan of trying to get it to burn its Chesto Berry, and then I wanted to also find a way to get it to rest again. I wanted to find a way to pressure that, and you'll see how I do that later. So yeah, he body presses, he takes down the Meowscarada. Raging Bolt is in. I am Terra Fairy on this. You can see that here. And my Kyurem's name was Walk the Invisible, for anyone curious, because it doesn't end up coming out in this match. Yeah, so right now, in this situation, this was a very pivotal turn in the match, because I had to decide how I wanted to beat this Zamazenta, because if I chose the wrong win path, then I was toast. So I really needed to play this conscientiously. It was very winnable, but also, very losable. I guess that's kind of a nothing burger of a sentence, but it wasn't quite over yet, but I definitely had my win path. I just needed to find it. So I ran the calcs, and I saw that Body Press does very little damage to Raging Bolt. Wow, I'm just modest. Max special attack and speed. Yeah, so I don't even have any defensive investment. I think Heavy Slam did like 15 max, maybe 20. So I knew this was my chance to really capitalize on the Zamazenta. So I get the Terra off here, and I So I call out the rest because I actually don't believe Thunderbolt ever killed standard Zamazenta. So I went for, did I say Thunderbolt? Thunderclap never killed standard Zamazenta. So I had to go for Thunderbolt. If I got him to rest, that was also great. So I Thunderbolt him for 60. That is the damage I was expecting. Now here's where everything comes into play. He doesn't have his Terra. He doesn't. He can't tear the Raging Bolt. He can't tear the Primarina. And his Zamazenta, if it rests, he's giving me free turns. And if he attacks, I Thunderclap and I get the kill. So knowing this, I go for Thunderclap because, if he rested, I could just click Thunderbolt and beat him down. Theoretically, he could switch around and hope I get a turn wrong as he rests. Like, I'm going to Thunderbolt in the Zamazenta, but he goes Raging Bolt. But then I Dragon Pulse and he goes Primarina, and that cycle could theoretically repeat itself. But that wasn't a very realistic possibility. So I knew this was my time to strike. I go for the Thunderclap and take down the Zamazenta. Raging Bolt comes in, and this is just cleanup from here. This is why him using that Terra early was really good, because it eases my prediction. Well, it makes it so that I don't even have to predict. Rather, I don't have to worry about Raging Bolt potentially going to Terra Fairy. It's like, oh, do I need to, do I Thunderclap, do I Thunderbolt on Terra Fairy, or do I Dragon Pulse on Terra Electric? I think they run that. Maybe he doesn't Terra at all, right? That's why getting that Terra early was really nice, because it eased the amount of risky plays I had to make. And overall, I think I didn't, aside from the first couple turns, I didn't really take that many risks. I just played it safe and really was careful around the Zamazenta and the Roaring Moon. I think that is what helped me secure this game. So he Thunderbolts. That never killed without a crit. And even 57... Yeah, no, I was never dead to a crit. It might have been a roll if he crit. But, I mean, even then, very unlikely. And then I always outran Primarina with max speed modest. So I click Dragon Pulse here, take down the Raging Bolts, Primarina comes in, and I click Thunderbolt to take it out, and I win the game 3-0. Yeah, it's being weird. So, yeah, overall I think I played pretty well. Obviously this lead wasn't great. This Iron Valiant taking 2 of my Pokemon, that was more of just a metagame knowledge thing. I wasn't too worked up about that. I was more so just upset at myself for playing this lead so poorly. But I mean, yeah, that's definitely something to work on. Just being able to anticipate what moves an opposing lead should have. Yeah, and not worrying so much about the worst case scenario. Yeah, I mean, this was just a metagame knowledge thing. I guess I could, study up on my OU because it's a double elimination tournament, and I'm in losers semis right now with this win. I guess I could, look at trends in OU and see what's common and what I should be watching out for. But either way, right? I'm not too worked up about this. If anything, Destiny Bond Valued is kind of cool as an option for HO. I've heard people talking about Encore Valiant. I don't know how much I like that. But Destiny Bond is kind of cool. just to really get that 1-for-1 trade in a pinch. Yeah, I guess if Meowscarada was more healthy here, I guess it wouldn't matter, really, right? Because +5 Zamazenta was going to kill Meowscarada anyway. Like, that health didn't really matter. So, maybe taking that Steel Beam, I guess in practice it wasn't as good, but I shouldn't be results-oriented about this. If Meowscarada health was more important, then that would have gotten punished a lot harder. Um, so, I can't just sweep this under the rug and be like, well, okay, Meowscarada's health wasn't important, so the switching it into the Steel Beam wasn't a terrible play. No, it was a bad play. It just didn't get punished very much. So, but it just so happened that it didn't end up mattering, right? And then I do really like the way I handled this Zamazenta. Yeah, I think I played around it as best as I possibly could have. Popped the Terra, and then just cleaned up from there. Yeah, I calculated the damage. Thunderbolt never killed without crit. Even with a crit, I'm not sure. Maybe that was like a low roll on Thunderbolt. So, I mean, I guess if like max roll was 60, I would have been dead to crit. Sure. But who's to say? Well, I guess people who have the calc open, which is like no one, because no one's watching this and I don't have the calc open. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool that I was able to just use my fundamentals to carry me through this and really beat someone who knows their stuff and plays this tier a lot more than I do, who plays Mons a lot more than I do. I went about the rest of my day being like, how did I beat Mav? I was just in disbelief. But yeah, I was super stoked about having done that. But that was definitely a fun game. I'm known for liking my longer games, but for a short, little 15-turn game, it was fun. I did some thinking. I did a bit of the old thinking, and I had a good time. Yeah, it's about all I have for this. If I have any more good games that I want to go over, I definitely will. Whenever those end up being, I'll talk about them here. But yeah, that should be it. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Yeah.